Inspired by another project, recently I began making this new robot using a couple of Super Bowl leads and a dead Bluetooth speaker as the shapes for its body. Those, of course, received a good amount of gribblies, 3D printed custom-made parts and some epoxy, but to make its legs I took a different route. I went back to the public makerspace I love and I cut a bunch of pieces I drew, and those, when stacked together, formed this very good looking leg geometry. The legs, of course, also received its fair share of extra parts, and then I moved to the weapon. Now, to make it, I decided to go with this broken USB charger body and a very good looking gribbly from a printer, and to seamlessly combine these shapes, I made some precisely 3D modeled connecting pieces. And with all the main robot parts created, it was time to add some secret sauce to the project. I mean, to do the final detail pass, in which I add the tiniest and most good looking gribblies I have in my collection. And that pretty much sums up what I did in the past 2 months. Now let's finish this bad boy. Now the legs were looking fine already, but felt a bit too empty, especially on the sides, so I decided to bulk them up a bit with some extra shapes. After I glued a couple of panels on the outside of the top leg segment, I decided to actually add a tiny extra detail that kinda looks like a big rivet, and I added a couple on each extra part. On the front, I went with this shape that was resin printed, and that suggests that something could be hanged to it, like a chain or a wire, to add on the storytelling of the model. I reinforced the glue with some baking soda and added this keyboard key right under it. Then I sanded off the features of that key, because that would definitely show up on the primer. I made a couple of shallow holes on that area, and as this crazy project has 4 legs, every choice I made had to be done 3 more times. Now at this point, I actually discovered something very interesting about sprue parts. And here's a fun fact about me: I've never ever put a model kit together. These sprue parts were given to me by a friend. But anyways, as I was saying, I discovered that the sprue segments bend so easily and they kinda keep the shape you make. And later on, I found out that they work very well with the primer I use, which is not common with some types of plastic that bend too easily. And this right here was the result that came together so fast for the 4 legs. I'm very happy with this discovery. The challenge of making something with 4 legs and each of those legs having like multiple segments, as it is the case right here, as I said before, is that each choice had to be made 3 more times. Also, when I choose a gribbly, I have to make sure that I have at least 4 copies of that gribbly, and that is very challenging. And this is really where the resin printing shines. I mean, not only the quality of the prints match the gribblies I found out there on Dead Electronics, but also when I print these gribblies, I print them in bulk, so I have multiples of the same piece, so I can use them on the detailing phase. And this is also where I invite you guys to check my Patreon store. As you know, I'm an independent artist and that is super challenging. And so I put up a Patreon store with some digital files of the gribblies I've been using to make my robots. And so if you want to have access to those and help me keep going, check the link in the description box. And now let's get back to the video. No, seriously, please help. Now I won't lie, the detailing phase of the legs was quite long, and so let's jump into the good stuff. Every piece finished and on its final coat of primer. But they didn't stay that beautiful for too long because I had to add the tipping layer, which is basically some speckles of black and red primer. Then it all received a coat of warm white, and then I tried this crazy camel pattern that turned out to be a major fail. See, at that point I realized I've never made a blue or a cold color camo, so I decided to try that. I mixed that good looking blue right there and some different shades of gray, and I went painting over the lines I drew before. And it's not that I hate the result, it's just that it didn't work for this particular project. Enters my new best friend, the abrasive sponge. I went and I carefully sanded off the camo with the abrasive sponge, and the level of wear and the look I achieved, I just love it. Then I tried this unusual painting technique, let's say, of using the sharp end of a compass to create this perfect circular scratch on the surface of the model, creating these fake panel lines. I'm also adding new coats of paint by brush on top of already chipped and washed surfaces to create different levels of wear. Now, for some reason, I had the word eclipse coming into my mind during the painting process, and so I decided to create an eclipse logo on the side of the robot. This is the type of weird idea that I love. And of course, after I made all the layers of the logo, I scratched it a bit using a sharp tool. And of course, I went with that idea of creating the fake panel lines and adding new coats of paint all over the model. And I guess my point right here is that we all should aim to have fun during model making and improvise, test new ideas, test new things, and we might get a surprise of what we can make. So yeah, I kept going and having fun testing ideas and adding different coats of paint on top of each other to try to reach different levels of wear. And I believe I even tried for the first time the copper color for the tanks that sits on the outside of the body. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Eventually I reached the finish line for the body, but as you can see, I still gotta work on the legs. But that's for the next week. As always, thanks for watching.